Excellent. Thank you, Steffi, for that introduction and for that background. I'm going to do a quick overview and a quick background on Cresta, and I have a few slides prepared for the conversation today. And then we're going to move into an exciting discussion, so I'm really looking forward to it. Would it be possible to put up the presentation? Excellent. Cool. So as Steffi mentioned, the overall trope and the sort of view on artificial intelligence overall is it's out here to get our jobs, and it's out here to automate existing jobs and existing processes. And I'm here to tell you that that's a very lazy view of artificial intelligence. And specifically, it's a lazy view in contrast to a more creative view. So if you look at the If you look at the kind of stuff that's happened in technology in history, stuff like the telegraph, the phone, the computer, all these technologies have historically been technologies that we've used as building blocks to unlock new capabilities. So they've made new things possible for us as humans. They've made us superhuman. With the phone and the telegraph, all of a sudden I could pick up the phone and call Australia and speak at the speed of light. And famously with the computer, Steve Jobs described it as the bicycle of the mind. And so why is it for artificial intelligence we have this lazy view that it's not a tool that's going to benefit humanity, but instead it's going to be something that's going to automate our jobs? And so that's what we're here at Cresta to change. We believe in looking at artificial intelligence not from a lazy perspective, which is a purely automation perspective, but from a creative perspective, which is how do you leverage artificial intelligence as a building block to unlock new capabilities and unlock new things that weren't possible before. And so what we've built at the core of Cresta is an expertise engine. And so it works on all the conversations companies have with their customers. And it's basically sitting and listening from the conversations a company has, and it's learning from every conversation. It's learning what makes a conversation effective, and then providing real-time guidance and coaching to everyone on the floor. So whether you're a salesperson or a support representative, Cresta is in the background, is listening from your conversations and understanding what makes you effective at your job. And what it's doing is it's looking at that conversation, identifying what results in a positive outcome, so a good customer satisfaction, and what results in a negative outcome. And it's training from that, and then once it's learned from that, it's providing that across your voice, your chat, your email conversations. And what happens with this is now conversations are not viewed as something where you're having a conversation with just a chatbot, where you have a bad customer experience. But instead, what you have is an expertise engine that's at the core of your business, that's learning from every single interaction you have with your customer, and it's learning to make those interactions better. And so your organization goes from being a purely automation organization to a learning organization. The exciting thing with Cresta is that we've already been able to see this play out, this kind of view of artificial intelligence to help people be better, and we're seeing these results in production in the world happening right now. So across a wide variety of industries, from SaaS companies to companies like Porsche to companies like Cox Communications, we're seeing artificial intelligence deliver real results, where it's driving sales, improving customer satisfaction, or ultimately delivering a better customer experience. And so the exciting thing is, and what I asked the group here to do, is look at artificial intelligence not as purely an automation, but look at it as something that's going to improve the customer experience and deliver better and new capabilities that weren't possible before. Excellent. Eventually, DLD 2 years from now will be improved by, we'll be using Cresta. Looking forward to it. Excellent.
So Steffi, first of all, thank you so much for the kind introductions and for hosting us at this panel today. And Zayd, thank you for sharing the Cresta story. What a great illustration of the value proposition of data and AI. And it's one of the most fascinating and disruptive themes for the next decades. It'll transform all industries and also profoundly affect all of us in the way that we live and work. Back to Cresta, maybe could you share a little bit with us what you see as the secret sauce of Cresta? It seems you're detecting the best of human behavior, use that best of human behavior, and then train others with that knowledge. And it's sort of two steps, right? First, you define what actually is effective behavior in certain conversational context, and then in real time, you detect what can be improved. Maybe tell us, what do you need to get right in each of these stages?
Yeah, absolutely. What's been awesome in natural language and AI in the last couple of years is there's been this huge transformation and advancement in the underlying technologies. So these large-scale transformer models you're possible to be able to train them on a huge data set of open web and all these large conversations. And then you're able to identify what are the conversations that are really successful. And so once you pre-train these models on a large data set, you can take a very small number of very positive, high-performing examples and really train the models on those high-performing examples and then deliver that to everyone across the enterprise. And so that sort of selective fine-tuning really allows for a model that's learning the characteristics of the top performers on a team. And it's what really makes what we do at Cresta special. And so we deliver that as a business outcome for our customers. They tell us what they care about, whether it's driving sales, improving customer satisfaction, or reducing churn. We train the model on a set of top performers, and then we deliver it to them in a way that drives the business outcome for their business.
Understood. There really is a special way that you're sort of mixing the sauce when it comes to the analogy, the culinary analogy.
Yeah.
Sort of through representation learning or maybe more refined methods. Is there anything that you're doing with the data that, with the inputs, the ingredients, that's special as well?
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the things as we've built out the systems and these kinds of large-scale models, we've had to go from the pure transcripts of the conversation, mapping into what are the key moments in a conversation. And so we've built this library of moments that identifies key moments and when things are happening. So when a customer might be frustrated, when the tone might be poor, or when a customer has a particular question. And we built this library that identifies these kinds of moments that happen in conversations, and then we enable a customer to basically map their transcripts into these moments and then trigger particular actions based on what happened in that moment. And so based on that trigger, then you can then deliver expert behaviors based on specific actions that happened within a conversation.
Makes sense. So it's a little bit like, with any high-quality chef, it's not only how you mix it, but it's also what quality ingredients do you put in, how do you prepare them, I guess.
Exactly.
So maybe just if I think about the technology and what you build, it seems like there could be so many use cases for that outside of just customer service representatives. I actually just think 2 days ago, GitHub announced, you might have seen what's called a Copilot AI. So it's an AI that you can use as a software engineer to help you write code more easily. And I'm wondering whether these Copilot AIs could be also useful in our lives, whether maybe you want to be more effective in negotiations, you have a little Copilot telling you, exactly when to make a point and how to make it, or even how to moderate this panel. It would be nice to have a little Copilot helping me with that. But what do you think? Where are other applications that you could see in the future for Cresta?
Yeah, I think the applications are boundless. And I think it's one of those things where every conversation and every sort of interaction is an opportunity where you can take the expertise of the very best people and help everyone else be just as effective. So everything from an interview to this kind of panel to even a teacher giving a class and a lecture to students. If you could learn from the very best teachers and how they teach a particular subject and lesson, and then give that knowledge and that expertise to other teachers, the impact to society would be massive. Even cases like in police, where you have these kind of situations which can escalate to massive conflict. If you can coach a police in real time and how to have a kind of conversation that de-escalates the situation instead of escalating it, the impact to society would be huge. And ultimately, what you're doing is you're learning how to have really effective conversations. And so our hope is that this kind of technology, it starts with these use cases in the enterprise, in sales and support use cases. But as it becomes general purpose, I think the impact is huge, and the value to society would be massive. And so I'm excited for a world where that kind of technology is possible.
Awesome. And yeah, it seems like you're in the very, very early innings of what Cresta is going to be. So awesome. But clearly, if you have these type of use cases, you need massive amounts of data, and whether it's terabytes or petabytes in your case of call transcripts and also external data sources. So turning it over to Jennifer as Principal Data Strategist for Snowflake, I'm curious, Jennifer, for organizations that need or want to do things like Cresta, translating information into real tangible business insights, what do you recommend is the best next-gen data infrastructure?
So as we see companies move along this maturity curve and start to embrace AI and the explosion of the use cases that are possible with AI, they do need a modern data infrastructure. And when I think of what is a modern data infrastructure and the best practices in deploying one, I actually, as we were talking about, I draw the parallel with parenting. It's about giving the permission to experiment and explore, but setting the guidelines and the rules. So when I think about the way that Snowflake enables that, Snowflake's vision of the data cloud really does embody that yin-yang of this modern data architecture. It enables that kind of rapid experimentation. It enables a performance so that you can test different use cases, you can test different scenarios very quickly. It also, because it's cloud-based, allows you to scale up or scale back. And that's something that's been incredibly useful within this pandemic period that we've been in. We've seen customers have to scale up. Think of Instacart and other online groceries where they've got a lot more demand than they've had in the past, and they've got to expand their capabilities. Others, we think airports or airlines, where they've had to contract. And so the beauty of the cloud is that you can do that and that you're really only paying for what you use, particularly with our consumption model. Now, the other element that you brought into that is the need to be able to bring in a lot of different data. Zayd talked about the transcript data, but also bringing in data from CRM, from other aspects of the business, and really understanding a 360 view of that customer. So you think about being able to break down silos within a company and enable data sharing across different business units or functional areas, but also being able to bring in data from external sources. So it might be creating an ecosystem of partners or customers and really expanding your own data cloud, or bringing in external data from, say, a data provider. So Snowflake launched its data marketplace, and we now have hundreds of external data providers. You can get consumer data, you can get corporate data, you can get the weather. And one of the most popular data sets that we had was from a company called Star Schema, which is an aggregator of COVID-19 data. So as companies were trying to navigate this ever-evolving business environment that we found ourselves in, they were using this data to really understand how to address their customer needs and better react. And they were able to do that without moving data. And that gets me, that there's an advantage. The data is in the cloud. You can change the permissions and allow people to have access to it. And that gets me to the yang of this modern data infrastructure, which you want the experimentation, you want the freedom to use the data, but you also need to set the guidelines. And that's the data governance piece that we've been talking about. And data governance, it seems that there's often some misunderstanding of what data governance is. And the way I try to explain it, I use another analogy. I used to live in Moscow in the early 90s, and as disposable income was increasing, people were buying cars. So if you think of cars as the data and the drivers as the users, there were more and more traffic out there on the roads, but the rules of the road, which is the way I think of data governance, were not really well established. So you had collisions and gridlock, and that's what happens when you don't have a good data governance in place. So that's really the way that I describe it is data governance for organizations is really about setting those parenting guidelines or establishing the rules of the road. And equally important is education, making sure people understand them. So it's establishing the rules, understanding the rules, but also enforcing the rules as well, as we probably all know as well. That's very important. So that really the crux of a modern data infrastructure is the cloud, which enables this experimentation with performance and elasticity, but also the data governance that puts the guidelines around it so that we know that we're staying within the rules when we use the data and deliver business value.
And so maybe, you mentioned, I think, a few things that are really super important. One is, what you pioneered as Snowflake, the concept of data sharing, which is obviously made possible by the cloud. Maybe talk a little bit about this and that roadmap for data sharing. Is Snowflake going to become the app store for data more broadly? That if we actually want to use any sort of data, we just come to Snowflake And at that point, we're going to be just getting permission to use certain data. No more file transfer, right? The whole value proposition of data procurement changes really from a file transfer problem to just a permissioning problem. But maybe talk a little bit about the significance of that and the network effects that that also creates for you as a business.
So we've seen an explosion in the interest in using third-party data, external data. So full transparency, I've actually been at Snowflake for 3 months. I came from Forrester Research. I spent 12 years as an industry analyst looking at the evolution of the data economy and some of the roles in creating that data economy. And just to use some of the numbers, we know that 70% of companies say that they're expanding their use of third-party data. But on the flip side of that, we're also seeing that there's a lot of interest in taking their own data to market, or sharing data. So we're seeing a growth in both sides of this dynamic, bringing in third-party data and using third-party data as well. And really the advantage that Snowflake has, you're right, is that once data is in that cloud infrastructure, you don't have to make a copy and send it to someone. And there are multiple advantages of that. One is that it's just much easier. It's a question of permissioning. I can turn that sharing on for a specific set of data or to a specific user, a specific role. So you can have very granular access to or very granular rules for who has access to that. On the other hand, from a security and privacy and governance perspective, you can also revoke it as well. So if you thinking back to the traditional way of data sharing, if you make a copy and send it to somebody, it's shared. It's out there. It's like sending that email where you think, oh God, I want to get it back, and you can't. So if you're sharing data through the Snowflake methodology, the Snowflake technology, you can revoke access, and they no longer have access. So there's the advantage of again being able to experiment and explore and test and try out different things and see what the value of them is, but also in knowing that you're doing that within an environment that you can control.
Yeah, makes sense. And I know we're coming up on time, but I think one really important part of the whole data journey towards data and AI is organizational and cultural resistance that can come up. And I'd love actually to hear from both of you. How do you talk to companies that want to embark on that journey, that see the value, and you proved it out with Cresta on how important it is to use the data for tangible business insights? How do you talk to them, and how do you overcome maybe fear in an organization where people might think, well, I sort of get it that that's where things are going. I might not have the skill set to be successful in this environment, or maybe my job even is at risk. Would love to hear from both of you. What type of conversations you have?
I know you feel strongly about that.
Absolutely, and so this is something we see at Cresta. So when we bring AI into this contact center environment, naturally there's a fear for the contact center agent that, oh, there's this big AI project coming in. Does this mean my job is at risk? And so there's a fear and anxiety before they adopt a technology like Cresta. But what really works is, one, like when they start using it, they start seeing, okay, this is helping me be more effective. And then they start seeing their peers use it. They see someone who's really using Cresta, they become much more proficient. They're having more sales, or they're being much more effective in their customer satisfaction. And those success stories of other agents using it, that really drives the sort of success for everyone else. And everyone else sees that this is a tool that is really helping them be more effective at their conversations. And so we see this time and time again, that we have kind of a training and education for this. When we first deploy Cresta, here's what to expect. And when we start seeing the success stories from the field, we then share that with the rest of the agents, and then they start adopting it more once they really see that success from their peers.
So the way that Zayd describes it is really about creating the incentives to embrace something, and showing the value is obviously a great incentive. The other element is getting people invested. And we talked about that. So when you're training a model and you're identifying the assumptions, the underlying assumptions, it's getting those practitioners involved so they feel like they're rolling up their sleeves, they're involved in the process. This isn't something that's imposed on them. This is something that they've helped to develop. And that's really an important part of this journey towards AI, is getting everyone incented to adopt it, but also invested in that process, in that journey. And I think that's a big part of the data literacy. We talk about data literacy often. And data literacy isn't just something that's for the data experts. It's really something that has to be at a foundation of all companies. Everybody needs to be data literate. Down to the cashiers or the field technicians or everyone that's in the organization, because actually those are the people that are capturing the data that's going to be used in the advanced analytics or the AI model. So we need to make sure that everyone, all employees are data literate, and in particular decision makers. One of the things, the statistics that's thrown out is fewer than half of decisions made today are based on quantitative information as opposed to gut or opinion or experience. And in part, that's because if you're delivering a dashboard or report or an insight to somebody and they don't trust it, or they don't know where it came from, or they don't know where the data came from, they're going to be less inclined to embrace that and make a decision that could put their job at risk. And so educating those decision makers is also very important for gaining adoption of whether it's advanced AI or just basic analytic models within an organization.
It seems like both of you are saying is it's important for businesses to present the use of AI as a growth opportunity for people in the organization, right? With Cresta, improving your performance with the help of AI. And in your case, offering enough data literacy education to bring people on that journey. And that's probably a good place to finish off our panel, doing better with data and AI.
Thank you. Thanks.
Snowflake and Cresta.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.